But I remember a previous mayor, and I think this goes back to Manukau City days. What's happened with did we include the railway station, the old railway station in this kaupapa?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, that is outside the scope of the study area. So just the Papatotoi subdivision.
Okay then, thank you.
Kapai. If there's no more pātai, I'll have an elongated 3 seconds. Any whakaaro before Councillor Collins closes if he wishes? No, Councillor Collins, if you wish to close.
Just a short
Yep.
Thanks, Chair. Just a short comment. I'm really glad that this is happening. The local board are fully supportive of this. This is a growth area. The Eke Panuku team will know that that local board in particular would like to have everything as part of that area as transformed. But this is really good for them. They're very supportive of this move and look forward to the developments once we get these key moves consulted on and looked at carefully. So thanks heaps to everyone that's been involved with the work, and I think this is going to be really progressive for that part of Papatoetoe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. It's been moved and seconded. I will put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 20. I just want to let our committee know that item 20, over the break and during the meeting, I've had a discussion with our staff around this, and there are 2 recommendations, and they're going to be chair's recommendations moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Casey. Maya, if you have those 2, please, in regards to item 20, I can then at least explain to the committee what we're looking at. Thank you, Maya. So as a result, and listening to the local boards that presented, but also listening and taking advice from staff as we always do, there's chair's recommendations that have been moved and seconded, and it's to defer the consideration of the findings of the Auckland Council's Millwater and Silverdale Community Provision. I'll read it from my emails. Provision Investigation 2021. Maya, if you could move. Oh, yeah. And the second one is request staff conduct primary research to refine the stocktake of courts and aquatic facilities that the Millwater and Silverdale community has access to, and to develop a gap analysis against the provision guidelines in the Community Facilities Network Plan. The reason this has happened is because it allows our staff now to do the work and get the update information in regards to Millwater and Silverdale. We heard the discussion in Pātai and everything else we had during the local board input. So working with our staff, this has come up, and it's like I said, it's been put in here for discussion. So I've got Councillor Kataraina Korau, is there anything that you wish to say? I can just go straight to Pātai in regards to this. Okay, we'll go straight to Pātai. So look, I got Councillor Newman first, and then Councillor Cooper.
Good afternoon, thank you, Chair. Kataraina, good afternoon. The report as it's set out at the moment effectively represents a desktop study. Are you resourced to actually go and do some field research? There needs to be some work done in the field up there, as well as some conversations that go much wider than a desktop study. So the comments I got this morning tended to lead to the conclusion that the staff just didn't have the resourcing to be able to do the work that was required. I'm not sure if it is a resourcing issue, but does this revised research that is proposed provide for the things that I think are missing from the research as it's currently informing the item on the agenda.
Through the chair, kia ora, Councillor Newman, thank you for your question. So yes, it is a desktop research, and so we have acknowledged that there are data limitations and assumptions based on the age of some of the desktop research that we've undertaken. So generally, this is the methodology undertaken for all of these community provision investigations. The item before, item 19, with Papatoetoe, followed the same methodology as did the previous Pairata Pukikohe, the Northwest provision. So the initial look for gaps tends to try and use resources efficiently and use desktop research to identify whether there is a gap, and therefore we do much more of the primary research after that. However, in this case, if we don't do additional primary research, then we only have the existing desktop information available. We will have to go through that desktop research and look at what parts we can update, how much that will cost and how long it will take. Some work is underway in terms of aquatic more broadly. So it's not just, it's about the level of effort for investigations as a methodology that we apply consistently across all of these. So in order to get to a decision, we're going to have a look and do some more primary research, which will be different than the normal methodology.
Okay, look, I think that, I think that the, we could talk about the wider methodology that's applied elsewhere, but in relation to this, I mean, your researchers will have the ability to have conversations beyond the desktop, though, won't they? I mean, the teams and the, you know, there are people that are only a phone call away, and that will be part of the methodology revised moving forward for this.
Yes, it will be.
All right, thank you.
We will pick up a phone.
Ka pai pātai matua Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the maps and whatnot, and this is a side question, but I don't know where Millwater is, but I do know where Wainui is. I've not heard in the New Zealand Gazette or in the New Zealand Geographic Board a place called Millwater, but I have heard of a place called Wainui. So I'm happy for it to be the investigation of Wainui brackets Millwater in Silverdale Community Provision, but I'm not happy for us to use a name that's just presented and because we're giving mana to a name that actually has no mana. And so at every council meeting that I've been on and workshop, I have stated, there is no place called Millwater. There's maybe a location, but there is no place called Millwater. The place is called Wainui, and it's known locally as Millwater, and it can be in brackets, but the place we're talking about is Wainui. Thank you, Chief.
Kia ora, Member Wilcox, we will correct that. Apologies.
Ka pai. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. It was a question, but it was answered around the resourcing. So I'd like to just have a comment instead, but I'll wait my turn.
Ka pai. Councillor Watson.
Just following up a little bit on the picking up the phone theme. Just checking, given the prominence, the potential role that the local schools might have in any provision that was certainly apparent in the report. I think it'd be useful than even just verbal conversations if that was actually committed to some sort of written form. Schools ability to cater for their own communities, far less the public communities, often differ from year to year depending on roles, depending on numbers of teams and whatnot, and the general trend in this area is for roles to be going through the roof. So I think 5 years on, or whatever it is, since this may have happened previously, it'd probably be useful to capture that in a more cohesive and focused manner than perhaps even a conversation, because if it is going to be a central tenet of provision, then it'll be useful if it's recorded not just as accurate at the moment, but also going forward, because schools do project these things out. So if that can be accommodated, that'll be a welcome addition to the research, I think. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Watson. Yes, we can make sure we're really clear in future reports around some of the assumptions made about the information we have at the time of reporting the investigation and some of the future constraints on how that may change quite quickly.
Kia ora Kataraina, thank you. Pātai, Councillor Hills, and then we'll move into whakaaro comments after that.
Kia ora, Chair, and thank you, staff. I guess my question I sort of placed to the chairs earlier when they spoke from the local boards. My, I guess, concern or question would be, can this be used in our future discussions around future urban zoning and things like that? It feels like we could be making similar mistakes we've made with other areas and the lack of provision we do have in, say the West Auckland pool situation. So I guess my question is, how are we using this information of the future lack of provision when we have a lot of subdivisions and extra populations growing, or we don't clearly have the ability to fund the facilities that people expect quickly?
Kia ora, Councillor Hill. Oh, this is a very big question. So I suppose the answer to the wider question around affordability of the Community Facilities Network Plan Provision Guidelines. So it's actually that piece of policy where we need to look at what are the provision guidelines we've got in there currently and what is the affordability of those. Because that question has become so pressing recently, staff are looking at work to see if that Community Facilities Network Plan is fit for purpose. And we had planned after the election to bring back a scope to the relevant committee to look at reviewing, because that some of the core issue sits with, can we afford the provision guidelines that are currently in there? And that's a really hard question to answer, and so we will bring that back for you to look at and tell us whether you want to look at that. In terms of these kind of provision guidelines, they are normally based on, FULS, so the Future Urban Land Strategy. They're based on, we identify areas which have already been developed, not just agreed for development. So because this is enhancing infrastructure, not enabling, it's about looking at, for example, Wainui/Millwater and saying, we know there was growth there, we expected this number of people to be there, let us check how many people are there and what facilities we've got and how does that fit against the current guidelines. So they're meant to be an indicator for quickly have a look, see whether we need to do more work, or to identify when we need to have another look to see if we need to have this enhancing infrastructure. So the investigations are meant to be at that quite high strategic level where you're just trying to get a feel for where is growth relevant to current services. They're an indicator of, do we need to do more work?
And thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. Is this also being able to go into policy discussions around development contributions and those sorts of fees to try and ramp up this situation where we get tied into decades without provision because we haven't backed up the funding at the other end?
So, and that's one of the things when we bring back our discussion about what scope you'd like to look at for the review of the Community Facilities Network Plan, because It is the network plan that provides the guidelines to enable us to understand what we can do, what we've said we'll do, and how that costs. But there are also ways to improve the network plan so it works better with DCs and the legal requirements for DCs, and making sure our policy is really robust if we get challenged around development contributions. So that will be one of the things I think we need to look at.
Kia ora, thank you very much.
Kia ora, Councillor.
Ka pai. There's no more part-time, so I'm going to go to our comments, whakaaro, and that's Councillor Dalton, then Cooper.
Kia ora, Chair. I think Kataraina sort of addressed a little bit of what I was going to say too, but these reports are really important because they affect decision making both for local boards and for the governing body. And I looked at the Papatoetoe report, and the methodology was the same, but the I guess a benefit Papatoetoe had was that it does have Iki Panuku alongside, and that's a significant difference because they are helping to deliver community outcomes and community facilities, and they will continue to do that. But I listened to Victoria this morning and her passion around her presentation, and I completely got it, because there's been $2.5 million in the Manurewa, well, actually in the LTP for 10 years now, and the board has funded different reports, and sometimes I feel like I'm not even reading about my own community, and that money still sits there and we still wait for a community facility because we await for reports, and there's assumptions on provision. I get concerned about assumptions on provision, particularly when it comes to facilities that are owned by schools, because we've been trying to really create those relationships for many years now. We can't rely on the assumption that we're going to be able to use these other facilities just because they form part of a stock take in a report that is presented that does impact on decision makers. It's inequitable, it's unfair, and that's why in this case I'm really pleased that it is going back out to be had another look at. The local board may have to fund that resource if they have it in their LDI, and that's what local boards do. They fund these reports to make sure that they do get a decent report to just about justify what they know about their own community. Because sometimes, as I just said, these reports coming back are quite foreign to what you actually know about your community and the facilities. So I just think that we need to be, and just the comment around we're going to have a look and see if the I think it was the network facilities policy that Kataraina was talking about, to see if it's fit for purpose. It concerns me that we adjust a policy to adjust to a budget, because we get taken further and further away from what we do as a council. And we just end up on this different tangent in terms, in this case, community provision of facilities, because we continue to change a policy because the budget doesn't fit it. Let's have a look at the budget, and let's have a look about what we're actually here to do as a council and decide what those priorities are. So I think that the local boards were quite justified in bringing this back today for the reasons that they've given. I hope that that scope gets widened into the fuller future urban area, so that it is projecting for that larger population that could possibly come through potential plan changes, but that it gets looked at thoroughly. So thank you, Chair, for the recommendations, and I hope that we get to see it again and we see what the changes might be for the future for this community provision report. Kia ora.
Ka pai. And it will come back to us. Councillor Moore-Holland, I just want to let you know that the partai for our staff is finished. We're into whakaaro now, and I've got Councillor Cooper, then Matua Tony, then Councillor Watson. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Councillor Moore-Holland, is there anywhere you can either get hold of the staff? Sorry, Councillor Cooper.
Oh no, sorry, I'll form it in a comment then. Happy to do that, Chair. I have been listening and it's just what I've heard makes me want to raise more questions. So I'll put it in a comment if that's all right.
Ka pai. Councillor Cooper, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so I don't know whether I can actually support these recommendations, Mr. Chair, and I know that you've changed them to kind of meet the call of the local board, 2 local boards. You know, we went through a process talking about how we were going to deliver community facilities in a different way. And I've just heard people saying, no, we can't assume that, we can't do that. But we actually put that through consultation and we said we're going to try and deliver community facilities a different way. And this is what the staff were suggesting in the report. And as Kataraina said, it's high level, haven't got down to the detail. And the actual approach to these have been consistent right across different local boards, and no one raised an inkling, but you get some local boards will do this, and they're often the ones that have a lot already, that have got a good radius where they can get to places, you know. And I feel really feel for the staff actually, because they've in good faith used the same process, and you know, provided that high level detail. You know, and I know as an elected member that sometimes my view of something, when it's deeply analysed and here's look at the actual facts, quite different from sometimes anecdotal. So I think there's a place for both. But I feel like this has just been rejected out of hand because the answer wasn't what people wanted to hear. And that's what concerns me, because now we're going to have to go back to all the others. Oh, I don't like what was in that, but we didn't say anything. You know, we've actually... I'm repeating it, but we actually said we were going to try and deliver things in a different way. And here was a report that said, look, here's some other possibilities. And we're basically saying no. And people have already decided, oh, that pool's not okay, that pool's not okay. That's not for us to do. So I want to support you, Mr. Chair. It looks like it'll go through anyway. But I'm very disappointed that we adopted a way of approach and now we don't like it, so we go, oh no, we change our mind. So that's what, and I'm sure I'll get a backlash from the next speakers, but that's okay. I just need to say my piece. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Cooper. I hope you don't get a backlash. But look, yeah. So look, for me, and I will close it after Councillor Newman at this stage. So Matua Kake, then Councillor Watson, and then Mulholland, then Newman.
Yeah, kia ora. And yeah, Councillor Cooper, not at all any backlash from me. I think your point is really valid, but I think it's also an opportunity, because there's such a conflict or difference in the outcome. It is worth, and as you say, we're high level. Going down to the next level is obviously the next stage, and to come to some kind of agreement or conclusion. So I think you know, not that I like sitting on the fence either, but I do agree, you know, with Councillor Cooper's view, and also Hills and Dalton. You know, they both put up you know, good arguments for this, so I support you all. I guess my only comment is as the opportunity to go back and do a bit more than just the desktop coverage of this is that opportunity. I know there's only 5.4% Māori in the area, but it's still worth engagement in ensuring that we've got the right cultural po and cultural significance in the area that reflects the history. Even though it might be small in numbers, it's still significant in terms of getting that history understood and there. And I think you know, I don't support the recommendations, Mr. Chair, because you've got Millwater there still. And was it Wainui or was it Tainui, Glenn? Kia ora.
Ka pai. Councillor Watson, then Mulholland, then Newman, and I'll close.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And I think you have made the right call here to defer this and to see if we can come back with some more up-to-date information that is relevant to the investigation. I mean, surely if you're going to make decisions with respect of any area, not least of which are fast-growing areas, then you want to be as accurate as you can in the information you've got. And I do have a bit of sympathy for the officers here, just with the sheer scale of what's occurring in this part of the Albany ward. You know, there's the Hibiscus Coast, which most people are probably, you know, familiar with in one way or another. But basically, what we've got almost unfolding before our eyes is another inland Hibiscus Coast of Milldale and Millwater, where, you know, one's got about 10,000 people and already probably 80% developed. The other one's on the way to 15,000 more, again, developing incredibly fast. So the scale of the development and the community provision that will be required to, you know, to cater for it is quite daunting. And if you do go around and look at community facilities, yes, you know, there's some lovely community facilities there that we are very grateful to have, numbers of which I might add provided by legacy councils going back to the 1980s. We've certainly benefited from Auckland Council's intervention in terms of you know, sports field developments in this area, and you know, the local community are very pleased with that. But there are other areas, and this goes to the accuracy of information, where you know, the community facilities are just in dire need. So, you know, the library was mentioned in the report today. The massive population that is serving now is just really beyond the pale. It is totally inadequate, and there is some substantive intervention required there just to cater with the sheer numbers. So I would say, Mr. Chair, that an investigation that just has a little bit more rigour to it, that in particular quantifies the potential contribution of schools, because that's often, not just in this area but across Auckland, that's kind of thrown into these assessments, the notion, oh well, you know, we can work with the schools or leverage the schools. Really, that's not really that viable in most parts of Auckland, far less here. Numbers of the schools are gated. You can't actually even get into them, okay? And all over north of the bridge, you know, my old schools, they're all gated. They've put in $500,000, $1 million fences. The community can't get anywhere near them. The schools' roles are very high, which means the call on those facilities, as such as indoor courts, is very, very high. When my children were going to the schools in this area, they were having to go to their practices at 7 o'clock in the morning because there's no time available after that. So in reality, the notion that, yes, a school has its gym and a couple of basketball courts, that somehow that'll be open to the public, is very, very hopeful, not to say not least of which in areas where you have you know, big increases to the school roles. So I welcome in particular the revisiting on the information on the potential contribution of schools, because I'm pretty certain that will be negligible, if not nil, given the demand that's made from within, you know, their own communities. So good on you, Councillor Al, for intervening in this manner. I think it'll be a more robust outcome, and it'll be one, therefore, that, you know, any future decisions will be able to be made on the basis of up-to-date information in an area that is transforming at a phenomenal rate. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor Watson. I'll go to Councillor Mulholland Newman and then I'll close the debate. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Chair. I'm just going to firstly acknowledge you for listening to everyone, because that's what our job is to do, and for proposing the changes. I do support them. This is not a pushback or anything like that. I also agree with the principles that Councillor Cooper talked about, but I believe more in democracy and listening to the people whom we work for. Given my love of data, and I've just finished a study of 50 businesses in my area, hearing their views and opinions on where to from here on some other matters, I like to base things on evidence. So I want to support the notion that we enable the staff to have current data, because I know they want to do the best they can for us, for our people. There is no doubt in my mind, and I've had that experience, as we know, as being a staff member, Manukau and Waitakere, and if you don't have current data like I've just had recently for my business community, you know, it makes it so hard to just depend on old or existing, and it doesn't give a true vision for where we're at. So therein lies probably some of the difficulties, Chair. And I just want to acknowledge that travelling in and out of Auckland sometimes, as you do, and it's been widely shared now that, you know, I've got a little property up on the Kaipara, and when I drive out of Auckland to go there some weekends, I look and I go, whoa, that is a lot of growth. And then, of course, I go down to the Waikato where I've got property as well, and the same thing. This is such a high demand, Chair, on our staff and our people and our resources. So I suppose therein lies the fact that I am elected to make fair, reasonable and democratic decisions, because I would otherwise colour the budgets and I would say put it into this sort of data so that we enable the executive leadership team and their staff then to give us reports that do help our decision making, and it is good governance practices. But so I can see all of those lines there. I just wanted to share those views, and that's what I was going to say. Why don't we look at some other budget lines and go, actually, we need to make those changes so that we can enable our staff and our people to do the job they want to do for the best of our community. And we are growing. So, you know, I get the whole budget thing, and there is pushback on me too for issues around my views and opinions. But I believe the good thing is we are in a democracy and we've got to treat each other with that dignity and respect. So we have to look after our people and the staff and be able to have current data, because they're asking us, or we're being asked to make decisions based on information that does need a little bit of a review. And that's why I will actually support these changes. So thank you, Chair, for your foresight and open-mindedness. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Mulholland. I'll go to Councillor Newman.
Oh, look, thank you, Chair. Look, and I accept that the council decided that it wanted to support a different way. Yeah, I didn't support that myself, because I've always felt that it was always going to be necessary for council to be proactive in investing in capital assets. And the problem here is that, you know, the issue is that the assumption is that what we're doing is a high level analysis. That's not quite where I want to be. Even at this early stage, I want to be in a better space with a line of sight to better research than a high level desktop analysis. Because the reality is that this report would almost certainly form the basis of, well, what would we look at if we're framing this future investment, for example, a contributions policy. You know, and I'm really concerned about that because, you know, I know firsthand the sort of gaps that exist, you know, in my ward because of decisions taken previously around zoning and consenting and future. I mean, my predecessor was famous for just wanting to get on with rezoning, but actually you've still got to deliver the facilities to ensure that community is a success. And the problem, Chair, is that I think that this high level analysis, which isn't based on good information, it forms the basis of information that flows into future policies such as a contributions policy. And the council does have a disincentive to flag new assets which are going to be paid for in part by DCs, because of course the council doesn't want to fund its share of the new infrastructure, because really we don't want to do that sort of stuff anymore. We'd sooner lease stuff out. So for me, I'm very nervous about the direction of this sort of research at a high level. And if it is an issue of funding for the resources for the social scientists within the council to conduct rich research beyond the desktop, then if the resourcing of that research is a problem, then tell tell us what it is that is a gap, and how much is it going to cost to fund it, so that we do have the social scientists with the facilities available to do that work. John Watson is right. Pools that are privately owned are not the grist for information to be flagged and highlighted in council stocktake reports. That's just not something that we should be referencing, because if you don't necessarily have access to it because we don't own it, then don't hint at that, because it becomes, in my view, an alibi for council to not commit. We have to be able to, be candid and say, actually, there just isn't the infrastructure there, and therefore that is the gap. Have to either look at what the community expects in terms of what can be delivered, and say to the community, well, actually, the gap is there and we're not going to deliver it, or we have to figure out a way to deliver it, which may mean that we have to fund a greater level of investment in the future and be more ambitious with respect to how much we're going to require from contributions from developers for those rapidly expanding areas of Auckland, which are growing, including around Silverdale, Wainui. So thank you, Chair, for taking on the feedback that you got this morning. But I would like to think that the senior managers within council can advise council as to what it's going to cost to resource this work to a standard that I think is reasonable, so that we don't face the feedback that we got this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. To close the debate, Katarana, I just want to acknowledge you and Koro for the work that was done, but also when I contacted you during this particular meeting in regards to what we heard at the local board input, I want to say thank you to you for allowing me to put this recommendation in, because it is a compromise, but it's also a compromise in regards to the methodology that we use, and it allows us, hence B in the recommendation, hence it allows the staff now to get primary research. Now, all the councillors who have spoken, I respect all your views and say thank you. And I just really wanted to sort of support what is being said across everybody, which is it allows us now to get that data that we really do need, but more importantly, what our staff need. So to you, Katarana, to Korol and the team, thank you so much. That's the reason, Katarina, I rang you to see a way forward. I also rang the chairs and left a message with both chairs, but spoke to one of the chairs that presented, spoke to also Victoria, spoke to them. I spoke to Councillor Watson, and my apologies for calling so late after I'd spoken to the respective local board chairs and members, but just wanted to acknowledge their input in regards to this and a way forward. So look, that's it from me. I just want to acknowledge our staff in particular, not only for the report that we ended up discussing at our pre-print, but also our pre-agenda. But getting this way forward is a win-win for us. So I'm going to put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
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 Against?
Against, Mr. Chair, just on the basis that we got the wrong name there.
Kapai. So I got Matua Kake. Any other members committee against?
Mea hoki e te he mana.
Yeah. Kia ora, Matua Wilcox. Okay.
Good enough.
Okay, kapai tera. So look, that's been moved and it's been put. So thank you so much, everybody. Next item 21, I'll move and Councillor Casey will second the officer's recommendation.